By 1713, the War of the Spanish Succession had ended, and the British Crown no longer needed its fleet of outsourced naval mercenaries. Thousands of privateers were essentially disposed of, sent home without pay or prospects. These men were left stranded in the colonies, abandoned by the very empire they had spent years defending. But they still possessed their warships, their heavy weaponry, and a deep resentment for the government that discarded them. They looked toward the Bahama Islas, specifically the ruined port of Nassau. Because it was largely undefended and isolated, it provided the perfect base for an independent society, one that operated entirely outside the reach of London. This map shows why that move was so dangerous for the Crown. Nassau sat right at the intersection of the Golfo de Mexico and the primary trade routes for the American colonies, placing a concentrated force of angry, trained sailors in the middle of the world's most valuable shipping lanes. To prevent this influx of outlaws from devolving into total anarchy, Benjamin Hornigold organized the various crews into a cohesive unit, effectively serving as the first president of the Pirate Republic. Hornigold established a strict code of conduct that was radical for its time. Instead of inheriting rank or being appointed by a king, captains were democratically elected by their crews, and all stolen loot was divided into equitable shares. They even pioneered a system of social insurance. If a pirate lost a limb in battle, they were guaranteed a specific payout from the treasury to compensate for their injury. However, Hornigold maintained a strange, lingering loyalty to his former home. He refused to allow his men to attack any ship flying the British flag, even as they robbed French and Spanish vessels blind. He had built a functioning republic out of a vacuum, but his refusal to fully break away from his colonial roots made him increasingly unpopular with a populace that wanted nothing to do with the British Empire. Eventually, the pirates utilized their own democratic rights to hold a vote, removing Hornigold from power and replacing him with his apprentice, Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard. Teach prioritized psychological intimidation over traditional combat. He wove slow-burning fuses into his thick beard and strapped multiple pistols across his chest, creating a fearsome brand that forced merchant ships to strike their colors and surrender without a single shot being fired. Under Teach's rule, Nassau became the central trade hub for the Caribbean's illicit cargo. Hundreds of ships filled the harbor, turning the settlement into a tax-free market where global outlaws could sell stolen goods without fear of arrest. He proved that a carefully managed public reputation could be a far more effective tool for maintaining power than any amount of gunpowder. This engraving captures the military scale of the Crown's response. In 1718, Woodes Rogers arrived at Nassau leading a massive royal fleet, sent to systematically dismantle the pirate haven. Rogers delivered a final choice to every pirate on the island: accept a full royal pardon and return to civilian life, or face immediate execution by hanging. Charles Vane, an extremist who viewed any negotiation as surrender, responded by lighting one of his own ships on fire and launching it directly into the path of the royal warships. Vane's aggression backfired. His crew, fearing a suicidal war with the Navy, held their own vote and replaced him with his quartermaster, Jack Rackham. Rackham, seen here in his signature flamboyant style, seized command of the fracturing republic. Even with an imperial fleet closing in, the pirates remained committed to their internal democratic process, peacefully removing a volatile leader while the Crown prepared to use absolute force. Rackham ultimately chose survival over the Republic. He signed the king's pardon, accepting the deal and effectively ending the pirates' united resistance. In a final irony, Benjamin Hornigold, the man who had first organized the island, also took the pardon. He then switched sides completely, becoming a pirate hunter tasked with capturing his former comrades for the Crown. Rackham's attempt at a lawful life lasted only 2 months. He stole a ship from Nassau's own harbor and returned to sea, only to be captured shortly after when British soldiers found his entire crew passed out drunk. During that final raid, the only 2 crew members who stayed on their feet to fight the boarding party were Bonny and Mary Read, who furiously defended the ship while Rackham remained incapacitated below deck. For most of these men and women, the pardon was an impossibility. Having lived for a decade in a society based on shared risk and democratic rights, they could never truly fit back into the rigid social hierarchy of the 18th century British Empire. The remaining pirate leaders met violent ends. Blackbeard was killed in a brutal hand-to-hand melee, while Charles Vane was eventually captured and hanged in a Jamaican prison. Woodis Rogers successfully rebuilt the fort, cleared the harbor, and transformed Nassau back into a rule-abiding colonial port under the strict authority of London. Nassau's brief existence proved that a community of outcasts could maintain functional systems of voting and social insurance, structures that the rigid global empires of the 18th century were not yet willing to provide to their own subjects.